If you think about it from a business perspective, this is actually really interesting, is that the more you understand the stories and how they communicate, the better you can use that, not just to create a better story to live by in your life, but actually create a better story as part of your branding and the way you talk to your ideal clients. Welcome to the Stories Cafe podcast, the espresso version of Stories Cafe, offering quick, enriching moments of reflection on literature, cinema, archetypes, philosophy, and the art of living deliberately. Just like a perfectly crafted espresso at a Parisian cafe, each episode is a brief pause for you to submerge yourself in something invigorating and fulfilling. I'm Annette Wernblad, course creator, internationally published author, and wanderer at heart. So cozy up as we explore the powerful world of stories, how they shape our lives, and teach us the art of living deliberately. What we're going to be talking about today is, what is it that I mean when I say that stories are so important in our lives, and actually if we're small business owners, in our businesses as well? What is it that I mean by that? And what I'd like to start with is that a symbol is something that contains a meaning beyond what it portrays or depicts, that it has a deeper meaning. And one of the interesting things about stories, that when you think back to when you were little, when you were listening to stories, when stories were read out loud to you, or when you were watching stories in movies, that stories communicate directly to parts of our subconscious and unconscious in a very fascinating way. And that means that if you read a book, for instance, on the human psyche, what does it mean, what happens to us when this or that happens, and how does that affect who we are, and what are the different theories, whether you read Freud or Jung or whatever psychologist that you prefer, how is our psyche structured, and all those things. It appeals to your brain in a very matter-of-fact way, and to your logical, rational brain. The thing about stories is that it appeals to a much deeper part of your psyche quite automatically, without you having to translate what it means. And I think for me, I've been fascinated with stories ever since I was a little girl, with the impact they have on our lives, and the fact that the more consciously we understand them, the deeper they actually affect us. When you listen to a story, it appeals directly to those less conscious parts of your psyche. And before I interrupted myself, this is what I was saying, is that one of the things I think is so fascinating about that is that children understand this intuitively. That means that when children listen to stories, they understand that, well, this has something to do with me, and this has to do with who I am, and they're actually very often able to decode and understand the deeper layers of stories quite spontaneously. Then as we grow up, we are encouraged to lose that ability. I don't think it just happens. I think we're encouraged to, grow up and behave more rationally, and don't talk to your imaginary friends or whatever it is. But children have this capacity, and that means actually, and this is what I see as my mission in life, and the mission with my brand and my business, is opening that door, opening that portal to that capacity that we already have to understand those deeper layers of stories. And if you start thinking about that, what does it mean that stories say something about us? Frankenstein and Dracula were written in the 1800s. And in a way, you could say the same thing about those two stories, that is that they were appealing to those much deeper parts of our psyche a long time before the pioneers of psychoanalysis invented the term the unconscious or the subconscious. Those stories not only appealed to those sides of us, but were actually about those sides of us. So if you think about this is another thing I find fascinating, is that very often when people say Frankenstein, they mean the creature. But Frankenstein is the name of Victor Frankenstein, the doctor who created the creature. The other thing is, why doesn't Dracula have a mirror image? because Dracula is a mirror image, is that they're about deeper parts of us. And listening to those stories spontaneously, and I think the Gothic stories have an innate capacity to communicate those sides of us and to those sides of us, that they're about that. And if you look actually at Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Robert Louis Stevenson's amazing novel, it is clearly and specifically about a man and those two sides of that man, the light side of the man that the world knows, and then that face that he never shows to the world, but that is a part of him as well. And I think the interesting thing about stories, again, just to backtrack a little bit, is that they appeal to those parts of us, and they are about those parts of us, and they communicate in a way that we directly, even if we're not aware of it, even if we're not conscious of it, we know exactly what they were telling us. At least we did know when we were children. And I love opening that portal and that door. You know, if you think about it, we actually amputate a lot of who we are, because we, especially now with social media, we're encouraged all the time to be happy and look as if our lives are perfect and all that. And very often the stories allow us to examine those sides of us that are not as acceptable. All those things on the surface that we chase in our lives, and go deeper than that and go beyond that and reclaim in a way those sides of us that we have been encouraged to put aside. And stories can help us do that, and the characters in the stories, which you sometimes hear me refer to as archetypes, can very much help us to do that. So that deep desire that we have for something beyond the daily life, I think it's very, very important to look at. So when I say, just very briefly, because I know that not all of those of you listening are business owners, but it is actually interesting that in our own personal lives, the stories can remind us of all those much deeper sides of us that we knew so well and was so proud of when we were children, and help us reclaim that. But if you think about it from a business perspective, this is actually really interesting, is that the more you understand the stories and how they communicate, the better you can use that, not just to create a better story to live by in your life, but actually create a better story as part of your branding and the way you talk to your ideal clients. And actually, if you look at the archetypes, you will understand things about your ideal clients that you can then appeal to. And here's what the reason why I'm saying this is, that even though stories do appeal directly to our unconscious and subconscious, the better we learn to understand them consciously, the more we can consciously use them to, and here comes my favorite word, deliberately create the story we want to live by, instead of just going by autopilot, instead of just living by default and letting all kinds of random occurrences define our lives. Is that we have that sense of what exactly is the story I want to live by. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed your espresso break and learned something new. If you're eager to dive deeper into the world of stories and ideas, be sure to hit the follow button in Spotify or the plus button in Apple Podcasts, so that you get each new episode straight to your podcast app. You can also visit us at Stories Cafe. Just go to stories-cafe.com. There you can explore free content for a taste of what we offer, or if you're ready for more, a paid membership unlocks in-depth discussions, full access to our archives, and a vibrant community of fellow story enthusiasts. I am so thrilled to have you here, and I look forward to welcoming you back to the Stories Cafe soon.